All right, so guys, this is going to be a two-parter. This is my reaction to a couple of things going on in the fight game right now. I guess the best place to start, we'll start out first with Brian Norman Jr. hinting at the fact that Keyshawn Davis could also be avoiding him. You know, there was tweets from his manager Adrian Clark. We'll get into that here in a second, and then we're also going to talk about the debacle that was Emmanuel Tagoe missing weight against Ernetso Mercado to the tune of 10 pounds. 10 pounds. He continues this growing trend of fighters missing weight. So we're gonna talk about that and just this culture of undiscipline in the sport of boxing. So let's start with Brian Norman Jr. Be Norm the Storm, personal favorite here on the channel. Definitely a fighter that I got a lot of time for. Just because he lost Devin Haney, it doesn't make me think that he's a bum or that he's not good and you throw him to the wayside. No, I'm still very intrigued to see Brian Norman Jr. fight. And in the aftermath of Keyshawn Davis executing one of the biggest ducks in the history of modern boxing, Brian Norman Jr. versus Keyshawn Davis is a fight that people are intrigued about. It's probably the best fight in terms of it being a healthy alternative to Keyshawn Davis, Devin Haney, because Brian Norman Jr. in terms of profile is one of the biggest names in the welterweight division. Brian Norman Jr. is a former world champion, and Brian Norman Jr. is one of Devin Haney's most notable opponents. So therefore, if you're not going to fight Devin because you feel like you didn't get what you was worth, then fighting Brian Norman Jr. would at least soften the blow just a little bit. But Brian Norman Jr.'s manager, the esteemed manager, the renowned manager, Adrian Clark of Fighter First Management, he stated the following, and I quote, "It's not that fighters are saying no to Brian Norman Jr. The problem is that the other managers are expecting $1 million to $2 million to fight Brian in a 10-round non-title bout. That's been a consistent problem this summer, right?" And so he's not naming names specifically, but inquiring minds know, and people that can read between the lines know that Brian Norman Jr. is a top-ranked welterweight, and there's only but so many names that you can match him up with. Guys like Rohan Polanco, Tiger Johnson, and of course, most notably Keyshawn Davis. So people in the comments start trying to figure out who is Adrian Clark talking about, who wants a fortune to fight Brian Norman Jr. Everyone says Brian Norman Jr. doesn't have a high ring IQ, and he's not the smartest, and he sucks because he lost to Devin, and he's chinny. But say what you want about Brian Norman Jr., that punching power is real, and dudes want a fortune to fight him in a non-title bout. That's probably not even going to be the co-main event, so make of that what you will. Now, Brian Norman Jr. came out the day after, and he said, and I quote, "I got my pen ready. I heard I'm supposed to have a fight coming up, right?" And one fan tweeted at him, and he said that, "Man, they turned down $3 million. He's not going to fight you, gang." Now, the $3 million, we all know what that $3 million is attached to. It's attached to the name of Keyshawn Davis. And Brian Norman Jr. actually responded to the fan's tweet, and he just simply said, "I see that now." So Brian Norman Jr., he responds to a fan's tweet about Keyshawn Davis not wanting to fight him, and he acknowledges the fact that Keyshawn Davis does not want to fight him. So look, there's two sides to every story. I still do believe in fairness, even though it doesn't sound far-fetched based on what's happened with Keyshawn Davis recently. There are two sides to every story, but man, I remember when I had a chance to talk to Keyshawn Davis at the Benavidez Zordo fight week, and I asked him about fighting Brian Norman Jr. when the fight really wasn't even that talked about before he even fought Albright in the rematch, and he said, "Hell yeah, I'd love to fight Brian Norman Jr., but it's got to be for a title. It's got to make sense. All that drivel and talk." So, yeah, from the looks of it, and we'll see once more details come out. It looks like Keyshawn Davis isn't trying to fight B Norm the Storm either, which would really be a shame, because that would have been, I feel that would have at least softened the blow a little bit. And if you would have went in there and stopped Brian Norman Jr., you could have compared performances to Devin Haney, and you could have went into the Devin Haney fight making it that much bigger. But right now, it appears that that's not happening. So we'll definitely keep our eyes peeled to that. I would love that fight. I think it's an absolutely electric fight for the welterweight division. And on top of that, last caveat, it's one of the rare instances at the championship level in American boxing where we can get two high-level fighters from the South, because Southern boxing doesn't have as many fighters as like the West Coast or the East Coast. at the top level. You would have had Atlanta versus Norfolk, and you could have had it somewhere. It would have been an electric atmosphere if they would have put it somewhere in the South, and I would have loved that. But right now that doesn't appear to be the case. So we will keep our eyes on that as things continue to progress. Now, switching gears, we do have the Clarissa Shields versus Kay Scott card tomorrow. The GWOAT back in action, one of the true greats of our era. Whether you love her or hate her, she is great. And if you say otherwise, you're just a hater. 19-time world champion, 2-time gold medalist, 3-time undisputed. I know it's not the same as men's boxing, but it's still greatness. It's still accomplishments, and she has a great resume. But that is neither here nor there. You had Ernetso Mercado, who was slated to fight on the undercard against, veteran fighter, a fighter that's long in the tooth, and Emmanuel Tagoe. And, Emmanuel Tagoe, he's most known for sharing the ring with guys like Ryan Garcia. He's been professional for like 15 plus years, has a lot of experience. I know Tagoe from years ago from sparring guys down in South Florida. Like, he was part of the George Kambosos Jr. camp. I believe he might have did some sparring with Xander. He sparred my boy Eric Lantis Jr. And so, he's really at the twilight of his career, and he was brought here to be a name, a step-up fight of sorts for Tito Mercado. They were contracted to fight at the 140-pound limit, and Emmanuel Tagoe continues to this trend of fighters missing weight in boxing, and I'm getting tired of it. I feel like we literally can't even get through a fight week anymore without a guy missing weight by 3 pounds or more. The contract weight was 140 pounds. He came in at 150 pounds, and Tagoe talked a whole lot of shit at the press conference about, you never fought no one like me, and this, that, and the third. He talked a big game, and when push came to shove, that's what's happened. So, luckily for Tito Mercado, they went ahead and they did get him a replacement opponent on short notice. The man that is stepping up to the plate will be Roger Hilly, who I believe is like 13-1 or 14-1. And they're going to meet at a catch weight of 146 pounds. So respect to Roger Hilly. I think I've seen him fight once, but I can't remember right now. Respect to Roger Hilly for stepping up to the plate, and he should get more opportunities for being a professional and stepping up on such short notice. And whether he wins or loses tomorrow, he saved the fight from Mercado. So Mercado has to go in there. But yeah, like I was saying, Mercado has to go in there and still be a professional and go in there and handle his business and continue to trudge forward towards the biggest and best names in the 140-pound division. This is a test of his professionalism. Can he stay disciplined and not let an opponent switch get to him? Because that happens sometimes. We've seen it before, where a fighter is supposed to fight one guy, and then for whatever reason that opponent switches out, and that fighter gets affected by the change. Most notably, and on the biggest stage, we've seen it with Anthony Joshua 7 years ago. So at least tomorrow, we still get to see Ernetso Tito Mercado do his thing, and we'll see how he looks. But it's getting really annoying with this growing trend of guys missing weight in boxing. And I feel like I say this every time a guy misses weight, but I'm serious. We need to get to a place in the sport where the punishments are very strict. Now, of course, if a guy misses weight by like an ounce or 0.2, that's different than if a guy misses by 3 pounds or 5 pounds, or in this case 10 pounds. There's no way you're gonna tell me that you missed a weight by 3 to 10 pounds and you try to make the weight. I'm sorry, you didn't. You understand? Like, fighters know. All fighters know this. Most fighters know this. Or it should be common knowledge that when you're not fighting, you should be generally trying to stay within 10 to no more than 12 pounds above the weight class you fight in before the contract is signed, before you go to camp. So when you go to camp, the weight cut can be smooth. But a lot of these guys, they're not professionals. They don't really live that life outside the ring, and it's really beginning to show on a grand scale. So, but I feel like, particularly in the USA, we need to learn from Japan, and we need to start banning dudes for like a whole year throughout the country, throughout the whole United States of America from fighting, the whole jurisdiction, if you miss weight at all, because that's how it is in Japan, and I've seen guys miss weight and had to set out a whole year. So I feel like if we did that, fighters would be more cognizant of weight class they're supposed to fight in, watching after themselves in between fights, and you wouldn't get this as much. But those are my thoughts on that. So yeah, those are my thoughts on some of the latest and greatest happenings in the sport of boxing. Adrian Clark and Brian Norman Jr. hinting at the fact that guys don't want to fight Brian Norman Jr., especially Keyshawn Davis, as well as Emmanuel Tagoe continuing the growing trend of unprofessionalism, missing weight in boxing, but not just 1 pound, not even by 2 pounds, but we're talking about 3+ pounds or more. So it's disgusting. I'm tired of it, and I hope at some point we could find a solution, because it's getting old and it's getting very redundant to come on here and talk about week after week, card after card, and year after year. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. Y'all can leave it at that in the comments down below, and I will see you in the next video.